In today's episode of Kwibuka podcast, more than 45,000 Tutsis who had taken refuge at the Nyamata church and managed to fend off the killers for close to a week lose the battle when they faced the Interahamwe and soldiers armed with grenades and guns. On the same day, 10,000 Tutsis are killed in Rukumberi sector. April 16, 1994. Massacres perpetrated against Tutsi in the former Kigaringari, Kibuye and Kibungo prefectures. Massacres of Tutsis in Nyamata. On April 7, 1994, Tutsis in Nyamata started to flee to different places. Some of them tried to repulse the attackers, but they were defeated by the perpetrators, and most of them fled to Kayumba Hills. On 9th and 10th April, Tutsis at Kayumba Hill tried to defend themselves, and the Interahamwe were forced to withdraw their attacks, and in fact, some of them were injured. Interahamwe sought assistance from Gako, saying that Ingotany had occupied Kayumba, Bushi Hills. Around 11 a.m., a joint attack of Interahamwe and soldiers from Gako landed from government buses. They fired at the Tutsis who were at Kayumba. Those who managed to survive descended to the grounds in front of the former Kanzenzo commune. At around 3 p.m., the former mayor Gatanazi came to address them. "Remove your dirt in front of the commune." They replied, saying, "We don't have anywhere to go." He then told them that wherever they will go, they shall be killed. The communal police immediately started shooting at them, and all the Tutsis ran towards the church, but the doors of the church were closed. The European priests refused to open for them, arguing that in Ririma, Tutsis had been killed in their establishments. The Tutsi then climbed over the fence and fell back inside the parish enclosure. At around 5 p.m., the priest finally opened the doors of the church to the Tutsi refugees who rushed into it. There were too many of them that at one point, men and young boys left the church to the women and children while they stayed outside. Others moved towards the pastoral center. On April 12th, those with children were given rice to cook. As they were preparing to feed their children around 10 a.m., they were attacked by Interahamwe for 30 minutes, throwing grenades and shooting at them. Some died. Others were injured after the killers left. All cooking pans were upside down. On April 13th, the Tutsis organized themselves and started cooking again. The Interahamwe raided and attacked them again around midday, which also lasted for about 30 minutes. They shot the herdsmen around the cemetery. They threw grenades at the church, and some Tutsis died while others got injured. Cooking pans of meat-cooked food were overturned. On that same day, there arrived other Tutsis escorted by soldiers from Kanazi. On April 14th, other Tutsis arrived from Maranyundo, and some were among those who had survived from Rebero Hill. It is on that same day that white priests left Nyamata. According to what Kaitari explains, on April 15th, it was on Friday, they were attacked by soldiers from Gako. Interahamwe had put on uniforms made of kitenge, and the local people had put on banana leaves to differentiate themselves from those to be killed. Some came from the roadside, from the cemetery, and others came from the road passing through Nyamata Catholic School and surrounded the Tutsis. It was around 11 a.m. The soldiers shot first. The Tutsi men first defended themselves by throwing stones at them. Later, they got tired and entered the church. And the killers followed them and started to fire tear gas, throwing grenades. They broke into the door because some Tutsi men had held the door resisting the perpetrators from entering. Then the Interahamwe blew whistles and together with Hutus entered with machetes and clubs with nails. They killed Tutsis up to 4 p.m. Some Hutu women and girls removed clothes from the corpses, as well as checking from the pockets of the corpses whether there was money. On April 16th, the killings continued at the Centre Pastoral. Perpetrators arrived at around 2 p.m. Tutsi men who had resisted were struck by wood pieces. Soldiers and Interahamwe threw grenades at them, and most of them died. Then they broke the gate and entered. They chopped those inside and left at 6 p.m. It was on that day when Tutsis who had fled to Benevichira sisters at Sister Agnes maternity were killed. On April 17th, the Interahamwe returned, announcing that those still alive should get out because peace had been restored and that they had come to take them home. Tutsis who came outside were made to sit on the compound, and then they killed all of them. On the same day, Interahamwe also brought caterpillars to dig holes behind the church where they could throw the dead bodies because they had started smelling terribly. Those who were carrying the corpses included prisoners in black uniforms. As for the survivors who had been promised that their lives would be spared, it was decided to bring them to the pit and throw them in, as it was easier than transporting their heavy decomposing bodies. Currently, more than 45,000 Tutsis are laid to rest in Nyamata Genocide Memorial Site, including more than 10,000 who were killed in the church and its surroundings, and those from different places including Mayanje, Rebero, Maranyundo, Kayumba, Kanazi, Murama, Ngogo, and other places. Some of the convicted masterminds of the genocide Nyamata are Gasana Juma, sous-préfet of Kanazi, Gatanazi Bernard, the mayor of Kanzenze, Kadirangabo Vincent, inspector, Bizimana Jean de la Croix, director of Nyamata Primary School, Ngomga Gervais, businessman, Janvier, staff of the Ministry of Public Works, who currently resides abroad. He's the one who brought the machines which dug pits in which bodies of the victims were thrown. Nambara, a policeman who served his sentence and has admitted to having killed an unknown number of Tutsis. Rwabidadi, military serving his sentence in Ririma. Rwarakabije Bernard, Interahamwe militia. Mugaga, Interahamwe, currently resides in Malawi. Pasteur Winyindi Jean, transferred in Rwanda by ICTR. Nzarura Laurent, reservist. Wachawa Seme, driver of Kanzenze commune. Nibizi Cleophas, councillor of Kanazi sector. Murangira Richard, businessman. Pierre, staff of agent of the Sodefar pharmacy. Rwamwaga, businessman. The massacres of Tutsis at Mugonero, Karongi. During the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Mugonero was a major Seventh-day Adventist establishment that contained a church, a hospital, and a branch of the Adventist Nurses' Higher Institution. The church was led by head pastor Elizefan Nachirutimana and his son Gerard Nachirutimana, who was the director of Mugonero Hospital. Most of the Tutsis who had taken refuge there were from Gishita, Gisovu, and Rwamatamu communes. Tutsis started to flee to the church on April 8, 1994. On April 15, 1994, Pastor Nachirutimana Elizefan, together with gendarmes who had ensured the security of the area, attended a meeting at the prefecture office and returned back around 7 p.m. Some of the gendarmes informed Tutsis that the meeting they attended was about to exterminate them on the Sabbath of April 16, 1994. Among the people who got the information, there were Tutsi pastors who immediately wrote a letter to the head pastor Nachirutimana requesting him to protect Tutsi refugees and to avoid shedding their blood on the Sabbath. They also requested him to talk with the Burgomestre of Gishita, Sikubgabo Charles, on the issue, as they were very close and the latter's father was also a pastor at Mugonero Church. In his indifferent response, Pastor Elizefan Nachirutimana told them that there is nothing he can do about it, as it had been already decided to kill them. On April 16, 1994, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., Tutsis tried to resist the attacks of Interahamwe until the latter called for support from Chibuye military camp. The soldiers and gendarmes came to support Interahamwe with many weapons and hence defeated Tutsis and started killing those who were at the hospital, the church, as well as the nursing school. On the Sabbath day, killers entered the church and shot with guns, threw grenades on Tutsis, and many of them died. Others were seriously injured. They continued to kill Tutsis who are hiding in the hospital and the school, including students. Those who headed the attacks included Dr. Kaishema Clement, the Chibuye prefect, Mayor Sikubgabo Charles, Pastor Nachirutimana Elizefan, Dr. Nachirutimana Gerard, a businessman Ruzindana Obed, and many more. The mayor entered the church and requested Hutu women who had married Tutsi men to get out, and 2 women got out, leaving their children behind. Among the killers, there were soldiers, gendarmes, and Interahamwe. They entered the church, firing and throwing grenades, and many Tutsis perished, while others were seriously injured. They continued to kill Tutsis who had been hiding in the hospital and the nursing school, including students. Massacres of Tutsis at Home Saint-Jean and Chibuye Catholic Church in Karongi. Many Tutsis were killed at Chibuye Catholic Church and Home Saint-Jean, which is affiliated with the former. Approximately 11,400 Tutsis took refuge there and came mainly from Gitesi, Mabanza, Gisovu, and Gishita communes. Many Tutsis arrived at the church on Tuesday, April 12, 1994, and on Thursday, April 14, 1994, they were starving. Chibuye Parish Priest Senyenzi went to inform the mayor of Gitesi, Karara Augustin, with the purpose of requesting him for foodstuffs and security for Tutsi refugees, but all was in vain. The former prefect Kaishema Clement wrote a letter to Father Senyenzi and Mayor Karara imposing them to send all Tutsis who were in the church to Gatkwaro Stadium to ensure their maximum protection. However, Father Senyenzi requested them to stay at the church. The president of Kibuye Court of the First Instance, Migo Juvenal, told his Tutsi close friend, Joachim Rugabagaba, to flee because the plan to kill them was imminent. The latter was a Tutsi who was living with Father Senyenzi. He fled, but Father Senyenzi reminded him that he shouldn't leave behind other Tutsis, considering that he was taken as a God-chosen shepherd, meant to sacrifice for others. Tutsis who had taken refuge at Home Saint-Jean were supported by a Belgian lady called Emma, who worked at the home as a manager. When she went outdoors, she gathered news and informed Father Senyenzi on the plans of the extermination of Tutsis who had taken refuge there. She was later tortured by Interahamwe by beating her, destroying her house and burning her car at Home Saint-Jean, saying that she helped Tutsis. She was later evacuated by the Belgian embassy through the United Nations mission in Rwanda, UNAMIR, and she was very saddened by leaving behind helpless Tutsis who had taken refuge at Home Saint-Jean. On April 12, 1994, the water tank located in Kibuye military camp through which refugees at Home Saint-Jean acquired water was shut down. Many meetings at Gitesi commune, led by Mayor Karara Augustin, Rusezera Innocent, Kayihura Bernard, and others were held to arrange the killings. On Saturday, April 16, 1994, men and young boys who had taken refuge at the church successfully counterattacked approximately 100 Interahamwe and other killers who had come to kill them. After being defeated on that day, they held other meetings for reorganizing and came back on Sunday, April 17, 1994. This time, the attacks were composed of armed soldiers, gendarmes, prison guards, and Interahamwe with guns, grenades, machetes, and many other weapons. Kibuye Prefect Kaishema Clement came at the church and told killers that he had been instructed to kill all Tutsis and authorized them to start the killings. The attack started with gunshots outside the church and in the church after everyone had entered it. Soldiers from the nearby military camp on Gatkwaro Hill also started to fire bombs at the church, as well as tear gas, and many Tutsis were killed on that day. Rukundo Emmanuel, who led Interahamwe, instructed them to enter the church and start stabbing those who were still breathing with machetes, and children were piled under the dead bodies in agony. Women and girls were raped before being killed, and their clothes were taken away by killers like they did for men. Interahamwe were deployed on the shorelines of Lake Kivu to prevent any Tutsi from escaping or going to drink water from the lake, as the area was surrounded by the lake except the pathway to the church. After the killings, the authorities and the Red Cross collected bodies and threw them in the mass graves already prepared. Nearly 150 children were brought from Home Saint-Jean to Kibuye Hospital to be killed. Massacres of Tutsis in Rukumberi. Rukumberi is one of the sectors of the former Sache commune in Kibungo Prefecture. Being bordered by Bugesera and Sache lakes as well as Akagera River, making it easier for Interahamwe to exterminate more than 35,000 Tutsis. The massacres of Tutsis in Rukumberi started on the morning of April 7, 1994 in Novi Cell. Due to the huge number of Tutsis who lived there, they tried to resist at first. Interahamwe communal policemen comprising of Butoi, Inyas, and Wimana had carried guns with them but did not manage to kill many Tutsis on that day. They only killed 2 families of teachers, specifically Nyiramurori Elizabeth and that of Naganda Celestin, who was the headmaster of Greenhasha Primary School. On April 8, 1994, Interahamwe came from Sache commune equipped with traditional weapons. The communal police, led by Mayor Ernest Rutaisire and Member of Parliament Mutabaruka Sylvain, met with Birindabagabo Jean-Paul, who had come with the army, and they were all gathered at ADPR Gwinhasha Church. The church was located at Rukumberi sector, and many Tutsis, especially ADPR members, had taken refuge in the church, busy praying with a Tutsi pastor called Yaramba. Birindabagabo, who was also a member of the church, shut the door and entered the church to launch the massacres and immediately shot dead Pastor Yaramba, who was at the altar. Then, Interahamwe started to throw grenades among the Tutsis, and whoever tried to escape was chopped with machetes by Interahamwe who had fenced the church. On that day, over 1,800 Tutsis were killed. On April 10, 1994, the mayor of Sache commune, Ernest Rutaisire, the MP Mutabaruka Sylvain and Birindabagabo Jean-Paul brought back Interahamwe in Rukumberi, Novi Cell. On that day, they came along with Burundian refugees who were camping at Sache commune to help in the killings. Many Tutsis were massacred that day in their hiding places, especially sorghum plantations. When the killers reached the home of Ruhumuriza, They killed more than 200 Tutsis who had taken refuge there, especially women, and other people who are less energetic who could not run. On April 11th, 1994, Mutabaruka, Rutayisire, and Birindabagabo called for help from the army from Kibungo military camp. They said the Tutsi of Rukumberi are tough to exterminate as they were mixed with Inyenzi, cockroaches, as they termed Inkotanyi. They were provided with approximately 4 buses full of soldiers equipped with several war equipment, and that was the extermination of Rukumberi Tutsis. Destruction of houses using bombs, and other weapons of mass killings. On the same day, the attackers killed many Tutsis who had taken refuge in the chapel of Teacher Gasarasi, which they also set on fire afterwards. Among all Tutsis who had lived there, Inkotanyi were only able to save approximately 700 Tutsis, including those who were seriously injured. Twahirwa Francois from Rukumberi, who was a staff in the Ministry of Labor, appeared in the attacks and was supervising how the massacres was being carried out. On April 16, 1994, Tutsis in Rukumberi were weakened by daily attacks. The one of 16th April 1994 aimed at wiping out possible survivors as assumed by Mutabaruka, the MP. On that day, Bugesera Lake connecting Sache, Bugesera and Bichumbi was very busy with Interahamwe boats from Bugesera and Bichumbi to provide support in extermination of Tutsis in Rukumberi. Interahamwe exposed and killed all Tutsis, even those who were hiding in papyrus swamps and in sorghum plantations. On that day, Tutsis were helpless and many of them decided to throw themselves in water, fearing to be tortured. Many Tutsis, especially women, children, and elderly people, were gathered at a home of a Tutsi called Mushoza. The attack led by MP Mutabaruka and the army killed all Tutsis who were there, and Hutu women accompanied killers to pick victims' belongings, especially clothes. After that attack, MP Mutabaruka Sylvain set up seats in the center of the road and placed beer orders to celebrate extermination of Rukumberi. Over 10,000 Tutsis from Rukumberi sector were massacred on that day. During subsequent days, killers continued to come and had to cut sorghum plantation all over Rukumberi to deprive any possible hiding place for possible surviving Tutsis. Other Tutsis were killed in houses like Chabatende Marianas, Nyagasazas, and other homes where vulnerable Tutsis like children, women, and injured people who couldn't run were left. Sorghum and banana plantations were cut down to deprive Tutsis of any hiding place. If RPF Inkotanyi soldiers had not arrived on May 5, 1994, there wouldn't have been any survivor in Rukumberi, since Interahamwe had decided to burn down the papyrus plantation after sorghum and banana plantation were finished. Some of the chief killers in Rukumberi were Deputy Mayor Albert from Jarama, Sache, the Inspector Bizimana André, a policeman called Butoi, a driver of Rukoma Health Center Doris, Gapfizi and Gasirabo Twaha, who were businessmen, and the latter owned a car that transported Interahamwe at the killing site. There was also a teacher called Habimana Edward, Mugwato cell leader Habyarimana, a soldier called Hadiji, who is not yet arrested and lives in Kimisagara, Nyabugogo, Harerimana Ezekiel, who was a teacher, Hategekimana Gaspar, a businessman at Ruona Market. In addition, such a commune brigadier called Inyasi Isidore, the driver of such a commune, a businessman called Kagorora, a teacher called Kamanzi Stanislas, and Kamayana Suprien, the former leader of Shohi sector, who substituted the mayor whenever he was not around, were also a part of the killings. Furthermore, there was a teacher called Rusatsi, Kareji Augustin, the president of Interahamwe in Sache commune, who currently lives in the United States, as informed by Semuhungu from Sache. Chiruguya, a Burundian leading the refugee camp. Mabei, son of Rurinda. Misago, the vice president of Interahamwe in Sache commune, who lives in Malawi. Mugabushaka Innocent, the former Sache tax collector. The reserve force, Munyanhwiro. Ngendahimana Jeremiah, who led the Rugwinhasha school, also participated in the killings. Nizeimana Augustin, a businessman whose car transported Interahamwe at the killing site, who currently lives in Malawi. Nyezabera and Zabagumira, who were businessmen. Rurinda, the former Rukunji cell leader. Rutuku, who led the attacks from Bichumbi via Bugesera Lake. Rwabuzisoni Radislas, who hosted meetings. Rwasibo, who was a businessman, and Shirimaka, who was a businessman in Gafunzo. Lastly but not least, Turatsinze, who was Nizeimana's driver, a lady called Mariamu, Uimana, the communal police, and Yeremia, the former teacher who ran away from Gachacha. The massacres of Tutsis in Rwamagana. Turatsinze François, the former leader of Kigabiro sector in Rwamagana, guaranteed security to many Tutsis who had taken refuge at his home and they were later killed. Also, many small children were killed there after snatching them from their mothers and threw them alive in the toilet. This was monitored by Rutonde commune mayor Bizimana Jean-Baptiste. Tutsis who were in Rwamagana hospital, patients and their guards, as well as others who had taken refuge there from Rwamagana city, were all killed. Tutsis who had taken refuge at Groupe Scolaire St. Aloys from around Rwamagana, Nyarusange, Gishari and Mwurire were all killed. The leading killers include Nkunda Bakuru, named Nkunda, Karorishoti, the former Rwikubo sector leader, Munyambo and gendarme from Rwamagana Gendarmerie. Approximately 3,000 Tutsis were killed at the shoreline of Lake Muhazi in Muhazi sector of Rwamagana. Naked Tutsis were escorted to die by Interahamwe, at the same time hitting them and chopping their heels with machetes till they were thrown in Lake Muhazi. Mothers who carried their babies at the back were thrown alive in Lake Muhazi to drown, while others were knotted with heavy stones and thrown in water to drown deep, whether dead or alive. Those who had taken refuge at Bitare bya Rutonde Hill fought with Interahamwe from April 12th to April 15th, as there were many from various areas. Tutsis were defeated and killed on April 16th, 1994, with very few survivors left. The leading Interahamwe were Mugwaneza, a policeman, Habiyakare, Ruhatana, Sibomana, Rusatsi, Niyabose, Mudaheranwa, and many others. Thank you for listening to another episode of Kwibuka Podcast. As always, make sure you leave us a review, sharing what you like about the podcast, and share with others who would be interested in listening.